Hi, welcome back. And in this lesson, we're going to be doing some vintage effects to imitate the look of old-fashioned photographs. In one of the pictures, we're going to be imitating the look of hand-tinted photographs that were black and white, which were then colored in later on. And another one, we're going to be adding some grunge and some halftone effects to the photo. So in this photo, there's just a picture of a girl on a beach, but I'm going to make it look old-fashioned. First, I'm going to be changing it to black and white, and there's a lot of different ways that you can change a photo to black and white. Probably the easiest way is to go ahead and add an adjustment layer. In this case, I'll just add a black and white adjustment layer to it. So automatically did that. And now what we're going to do is add some more layers on to add the color back in. So it's not going to look natural like a natural photograph, it's going to look more like it's hand painted, which is really in reality what we're doing. So I'm going to add a new layer. And this one I'm going to maybe color the ocean in. So I will then go ahead and look for a blue color that I want to tint it. And it's going to be artificially bluer than in real life. So you can pretty much choose any one that you like. And I'll start by going ahead and painting on the ocean. So right now it's a solid blue, which is not what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using the blend modes once again so that we can have the color blend right into the photo. And it's always good to go ahead and cycle through them to see which one is going to imitate the look that you want to do. And you can try different ones. So maybe in this case I'm going to use the color blend mode. And then I can also reduce the opacity a little bit so it's not quite as strong as the one before. If you want to test, maybe you can test another color by adding a new layer. And then you can try maybe softening up the color a little bit if you think it's too strong. And choose which one that you want to use. And I think maybe I like that one a little bit better. So I'll go ahead and delete the original one that I used, and I'm on blue here. And then I can adjust my brush, once again with the bracket tools, to cover a larger surface. And of course this doesn't have to be perfect because back when they did this to photographs in the olden days with black and white photos, they were simply coloring right onto the photograph itself, and it wasn't perfect. And in this case you might want to just take your time on coloring it. And it's perfectly fine if I paint over a little bit more than I really wanted to. But if you do mess up, you can always just go ahead and go to the eraser tool and erase out little bits that you want to get rid of if you did a little bit too much. And then cycle back and forth between your brush tool. So when you're done with one color, you can easily just move on to another color. And one thing that really helps is to do a separate layer for each color. In case you make a mistake, it's easier to adjust. So I'm going to do the sand, and maybe this time I'm going to choose kind of a yellowy, sandy color. And once again, I can do the same process of just painting over larger areas and then going ahead and switching the blend mode and maybe reducing the opacity so that it's not as strong of an effect here. And another thing that's helpful is if you do want to get into fine details, you can easily just zoom in to certain areas so you can see a little better. But once again, some of the vintage effects are not going to be as detailed and perfect, and that's okay. So you don't have to worry about it too much. So in this one, you used a very subtle effect, and I've added blue to the water and some yellow to the sand. You can add as few or as many colors as you want. Generally, you're better off using fewer colors, but I've also left a little bit black and white with the sky. So we're going to do one more vintage type of photograph looking, but this one we're going to give it a little bit more of a painterly look. And I always like to duplicate my background layer just in case. And I'm going to be working from this copy right here. And I'm going to add an adjustment layer from my gradient maps that have some nice menu full of photographic toning types. So I'm going to click over here on my gradient maps. And this is not the one I want. There's some photographic toning presets that you can use and you can add to your gradients. And I can cycle through some of these here to see which one I like the best. And I want something that looks black and white but with a very subtle sepia look to it. So I think I like this one the best. So I'm going to leave that there. Next, what I'm going to do is add some gradient layers and to give it some color back into the original. And first, maybe I'm going to start with my sky. So I'm going to add a blue. And I will choose kind of a blue, skyish, light blue, baby blue color over here. And I'm going to just go ahead and paint bucket a layer in of blue. And I'm going to reduce my opacity a lot so it's more subtle. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and add a layer mask to that blue. And then nested under the paint bucket, there's my gradient tools. I'm going to select the one that is black faded off. So when I add this to my layer mask with the black, it's going to subtly fade the blue sky from the top to the bottom. And actually I did that from the bottom to the top, so I'm going to stretch from the bottom up. And I can do this as many times as I want to make sure that there's no blue on the bottom. Okay, next I'm going to add one for the water. And I'm going to choose a color that's a little bit kind of a greenish blue, kind of teal look, but definitely more of an artificial color that's not the real ocean color to give it kind of a surreal look. I'm going to press OK. Once again, repeating the process of paint bucketing, reducing the opacity, adding layer mask, going back into my gradient tools, and I'm going to get rid of it on the top. And then I'm going to go again from the bottom so that the green stays in the middle. And maybe up the opacity a little bit too, to show a little bit more green. One more time, I'm going to do this for the sand. And I'm going to choose kind of a sandy, yellowy color. Repeating the process one more time, choosing the paint bucket, reducing my opacity, grabbing my gradient, and then gradually getting rid of the stuff on the top. So when you're done adding your gradients and your color, the last step, I'm going to add an oil painting filter that's going to give it the painterly look. So I'm going to go into my filter menu and click on oil painting. And there's these different sliders here that you can slide around to see how you like it. I want to go for a smoother look without any shine. And when I'm happy with it, I just press the OK button. And I'm done. So as you can see, there's a lot of different vintage effects that you can apply to your photographs. Go ahead and have fun with that. I would love to see what you can do, and go ahead and post them to the platform. And so next we're going to move on to doing a different kind of vintage photograph. Here's another girl on the beach, and I'm going to start by adding some color to the photograph. And I'm going to add an adjustment layer, so a little bit of vibrance for some, just a punch of color and a little bit of extra saturation. And then once again, I can change the hue a little bit by tweaking that. So instead of a purplier color, I'm going to make it a little bit more kind of a blue-green. And then I don't like the way that her skin tone is going, so I'm going to erase part of it off of her skin so that she doesn't appear so orange. And I'm just painting off with black right on the actual hue and saturation adjustment layer. Okay, and so the next part, what I'm going to do is add a halftone effect, and there's a couple of different halftone effects that you can do. And sometimes what I like to do is just duplicate a layer by dragging it onto New Layer button. So just in case I want to change something up later, it's easier. And I'm going to go into my filter menu, and you can go to Pixelate and then Color Halftone. And you can play with these different settings here, but I'm just going to stick with the default there. And if you notice, it adds a halftone effect to it. It's too harsh for what I'm looking for. And I've saved another background. I'm going to go ahead and save one more copy of it. And I can go ahead and reduce the opacity of this one so it's not as strong. But you can still see that halftone effect. And then the other thing too is I can add another one on by doing filter, and this time I'm going to go to a filter gallery. But actually before that, I'm going to just go ahead and change my color swatches to black and white, because it will change the halftone to those particular colors that you've chosen in your foreground and background. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different effects in here. I'm just looking for the halftone pattern one. And you can go ahead and zoom in or out here so you can see the whole picture and basically what the effect's going to do. You can adjust to the size, and if you want the contrast, you can adjust these settings as well. And you can do lines or circles as well, but in this case I just want to stick to my dot pattern. And I think that one's okay, so I'm going to press OK. And since I don't want it to be black and white, I just kind of want the effect to blend in, I can go ahead and blend my effect here and reduce the opacity. So far it looks pretty good. And then just to make it look kind of like an older photograph, I'm going to go ahead and add another texture, because I like texture so much and it makes it look old and weathered. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then once again, I'm going to adjust my blend modes and look for one that works and make the effect a little bit more subtle. And I'm done. So in this lesson, we're actually going to be working with short video clips and editing those in Photoshop. We're going to be taking a short video clip that was filmed on a DSLR camera in a historic area, and we're going to be adding some grunge and texture to it to give it an old-fashioned feel that kind of matches the era that we're working with. And so I just have a video that I've opened in Photoshop. The process is exactly the same as if you open a photo. Now if you look over in the layers palette, you will notice that there is a little film video icon next to it so that you know that it's a video. Next, what I'm going to do is open up my video timeline. So if you go up to the window, you can go down in the menu to where it says timeline, and I click on that. And I have my little video here. So if I just press play, I can just play back my video clip. And I have the kids walking back and forth in front of the building. So as you can see, both on my video timeline and in my layers palette, I have a still photo added to the timeline next to my short video clip. And I'm going to later be using this as a texture to add to the video. So I don't want it side by side on the timeline. I actually want to pull it up on top, so a top layer. So what I need to do in order to do that is to pull that out of the video group and place that on top. So now looking down in my timeline, the still photo is on the top. And I just have it turned off temporarily right now because I don't need to use it yet. And I can stretch my timeline out to make it bigger or smaller, or I can zoom in or out depending on what I need. Okay, going back to my video clip, I now want to add a gradient map, a photographic toning gradient map to my video clip. So it's good to keep in mind that anything you can do to a photo, you can do to a video too. So basically it's an extra layer on top of the video that is a type of filter. So up over here, I have my adjustments, and I'm going to click on the gradient map tool, and I'm going to go over here and see my little gradients. You want to make sure that you choose a photographic toning one and add that to your menu. And then you can cycle through some of these photographic toning filters and decide which one that you like best. So since I'm going for a kind of an old-fashioned look, I want to pick one that's like a sepia type of color. Now, if you notice over here, there is basically it's an extra layer, and you may want to add that gradient map to just the layer underneath, the video clip underneath, or you may want to add them onto just one specific clip, because later on you may want to splice that or add extra video clips. So you can turn this off or on. So if you want this to only add to the one underneath, you have this turned off. If you want it to add it to all the video clips that are going to be going on later on, then you can turn it on. So the next thing now is I'm going to go back to my texture, and I'm going to turn that layer on. And what I typically do is when I'm shooting short video clips, and I always try to remind myself to film more little short video clips as I'm taking photos, I like to take textures nearby to where I'm filming as well. So here is a picture of a rusty refrigerator that was nearby to the location where we filmed the clip. And I want this to cover the entire area of the video clip. So what I'm going to do is do Command T, and I'm going to make this larger so that it covers the whole area. And I don't necessarily want to see the handle of the fridge, so I can scooch this over so I can maybe just hide. Now notice I'm also holding the Shift button down to constrain the proportions. And so I now have a nice rusty texture. So I'm going to press the check mark when I'm happy with where it is. And the other thing, down here on my timeline, you can see that the video lasts so much time over here, but the photo, you need to adjust it so that it's going to last the same amount of time as the video. So it's very simple to just click on the end and pull and drag this so that that photo is set for the same timing as the video clip and that they match. And then next, I can try different blend modes to see which one is going to work with my video. So you can cycle through some of those and decide which kind of effect you want to look for. And I think I like the multiply blend mode the best. And I can easily play back my video clip. The other thing too is there's audio if you want. In this case, I don't necessarily need the audio, so I can just turn the audio off. And then I can press the play button, and it's playing my video, and you can see what it looks like. And I think I like that texture. If you want, you can of course reduce the opacity if you want to make it a little bit more subtle. So have fun adding grunge and texture to your videos, and if you have any questions, be sure to post them to the platform. So in this lesson, we're working with video, and we're going to be learning how to splice up the video and adjust the speed for an old-timey effect. In another lesson, we had learned how to add grunge and texture to video clips, which goes in line with the theme that we're working with. And so we already have a gradient map adjustment layer on top of the video clip and a texture. Now, when I splice my video, it's actually quite easy. I want to make sure that I'm on the correct layer. So I've selected the bottom video layer, and over here, I'm going to just click on the little cut symbol, and I've just cut my video into 2 clips. Now you've noticed they're side by side on the timeline, and the layers palette, they're one on top of each other. The gradient map is right above it. And what I really want to make sure of is that the gradient map will affect every single layer, because I want the same theme throughout. So if I click here, I can bring that dialog box up. Now over here, you can see this little thumbnail with this little arrow pointing down. If I click that and toggle that, when I have the arrow pointing down without the cross mark over it, it's only affecting one of the clips and just the one directly underneath. And if I toggle that off, it is going to affect all of the layers underneath. So depending on what kind of look you're trying to achieve, you can decide how you want to use that. In this case, I want it to affect all of the different layers underneath. Okay, so now I've spliced this video clip into two. And now what I want to do is shorten little pieces because I want a jittery type of effect where there's skips in the frames. So I can easily just go right here on the timeline and push this over a little bit so that one little section of the video will disappear. So when I do that, it automatically shortens the video clip and brings that the second video clip right up next to the other one. So when I play it back by pressing the play button, you can see the little skip where she suddenly disappears. Once again, I'm gonna splice again, and I can eliminate a little bit over here, and it's pushing it through. So when I play it back, you have little cuts. And down here on the bottom, you can zoom in or zoom out. So it depends on how detailed you want to get with your frames. So I'm zooming in closer, cutting again, and I can also, push this little setting over here, slice again, and I can actually just delete a little clip out of that way, and it automatically pulls them back together. And you can just play it back and see how you want it. I'm going to zoom back out again and cut again. I mean, you can repeat this process as many times as you need. And I'm going to isolate one little part. So now over here, I'm selecting on this one little layer. Let's say I want to maybe pick one where, I'll choose this one where he's in the frame, walking across the frame. I can click on this little arrow over here and I can adjust the duration of the video clip. So I want to make it faster or slower. So if I want to make it faster, I just up the speed and click away to get rid of that menu. And then maybe I'll take another little short clip, chop this, chop it again, and then go over here, and maybe I want to make this one a little bit slower. So I'm going to make the speed slower. So then when I play it back, you can see little skips and chops and adjustments in speed. So it gives it a really fun effect. Now that I've got my finished video clip, it is now shorter than the texture layer on the top. So I'm going to go back up to my texture layer and readjust that. You can see I've selected in the layers palette and I've selected over here in the timeline. If I just go to the end and pull it so that it will snap to the layer underneath, and it's shortened by timeline so that the texture in the video clip match. So as you can see, it's really easy to create an old-timey effect by adjusting the speed and cutting the clips to a short video clip. In this lesson, we're going to be working with creating custom brushes, which we will then later use to stamp on video frame by frame to add additional texture and grunge to a photo, giving it even more of an old-timey effect. So here I'm using a photo of a rusty fridge that I've used before, and I'm going to turn this into a custom brush. I have two layers here in case I make a mistake. I'm just going to go ahead and turn off my background layer, start with this one, and I just want a texture for my brush, and I don't want to have this refrigerator handle, so I'm just going to go ahead and crop the photo, and I'm just going with the original ratio, and then I can just drag the corners to make it just the right size that I want, and maybe pull this in a little bit more under here, and then I can just press the check mark to crop. So I've just cropped it, and now what I'm going to do is convert this to a high contrast black and white, so I can just get the texture part, not the color. So I'm adding a threshold adjustment layer to this, and then over here I can adjust how much or how little I want it to show. So I'll kind of choose maybe medium here. Close that up. And now I'm going to merge these two together because I'm going to get rid of the white so I just have the black left. So I'm going to go up to layer and then merge down. So I have those two layers combined. And now I'm going to get rid of the white, so I'll go up to the select menu and choose color range. So just use the little dropper tool, click in there and press OK. And it selected all the white, so when I press delete, it just leaves the black. And then I'm going to do Command D to deselect, so it's left only with the black. And there's a lot of black over in the corners when I want it to be just a little bit more subtle. So I'm going to use my eraser tool and choose a nice round hard brush. And then I'm just going to maybe erase some of the bigger chunks over here. And I think I like that pretty well. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a brush. So going up to the top of the toolbar, I'm going to do Edit, and I'm going to do Define Brush Preset. And I click on that, and I'm going to call it Rusty Fridge. And then when I like it, I can press OK. And I now have a brush, so you can see this brush is what I'm going to use to stamp on video. Now I've also done the same thing with other photos using the exact same process. So for example, I've turned this one into a brush, this one into a brush, and this one into a brush. And once again, I'm using photos that come from the same place where I had taken the video clip. And I also, besides taking pictures of textures, I like to take pictures of text that will fit in with the theme of what I'm doing for the video. So in this case, we were doing this in a historic gold rush town, and so that really works well with what we're doing. So back over to my video clip here, I'm now going to open up my video timeline again. So this is down here, and I'm going to add a new blank video layer. So if I go up to the top of the toolbar and I do layer, and I look down here, video layers, and new blank video layer. So basically what this is doing is just creating a blank video layer, and I'm just going to call this the stamping layer. And I can go ahead and stamp on this video frame by frame on this blank video layer. So I'm going to go back over to my brushes, and I'm going to go over to my textures, and I can choose my brush that I just made. Now I made it white over here, so if you notice, there was a little white grunge that added to the corner. And then I can advance one frame by clicking here, and I can maybe go to black and then stamp black on here. I can use the bracket tools to change the size, and it kind of just splatters that texture on here. Advance a frame, do it again, and just slightly changing the position each time, maybe even doing it twice. And I'm going, and I can skip frames where I don't have any grunge on it as well if I want to. Maybe skip a couple. Maybe I can tweak the bracket tool again to get a different size. And I just keep doing that. Now it definitely takes a little bit of time and patience, but you're going to really like the effect when we're done. And you can also go ahead and push that timeline too to advance as well. So I'm going to go through this video clip first with a texture, and then I can go back later with the text. I can always switch back to maybe white or a gray or color too, to change it up a little bit. And then maybe flip back to black again. So when I play this back, you can see it's adding a lot of texture and grunge to it. So just as I added texture to my video clip, I'm going to stamp on text. And I've saved each of those different texts over here, and whenever I've done define brush preset, it saves my brushes. So if I go over here, they're down here in my list. So I'm going to start with the brush that says historic, and when I stamp anywhere on here, it just puts the word right onto the video frame. And then once again, the same process is advancing and stamping the word on there. You can change the size by using the bracket tools too. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't necessarily have to see the whole word on here. And then I can toggle back and forth and put other words in here, like hidden treasure. And once again, this takes a lot of patience, but the effect is really cool. Now I'll switch over to a different brush that I pre-made. This one says Far West. And skip a few frames forward. And maybe another thing that I can do is, I'm going to make my brush nice and big. Now, maybe I want it to not stamp right on her, so I can always just erase a certain area of the brush so it doesn't maybe stamp right on her. I'm going to go back to my brush tool, and once again, maybe erase certain areas. And keep going with that. And of course, it doesn't have to be perfect, because even the more imperfections that you have, the better it will look. And then when I play it back, it looks something like this. So that's a cool, easy way to add texture and text stamped frame by frame onto your video clips. If you have any questions, post them to the platform.